Tony Brown's been talking about Sunwolves and Japan, South Africa recently. I was thinking about this. I read this in the paper. I only read it today. Um, I thought that's a bit interesting. There seems to be a bit, at least in the New Zealand media, there seems to be a bit of anti South African stuff going on. They're kind of poking away. And I was literally wearing the jersey I have on now. I was wearing this newly sent to me from the Imbiber Sunwolves jersey, and I thought, all right, this is kind of destiny. I better talk about it because I'm wearing the jersey. It's too much of a coincidence that the Sunwolves come up. So if you hadn't heard, the Sunwolves have been cut from Super Rugby, and their demise came a bit earlier. There was some potential hopes they might be able to make it into Super Rugby's Australian competition, but that's been confirmed to be a no-goer. So the Sunwolves are essentially a former team now. They're not going to get back into action, which is for some sad to see. Obviously, I like the Sunwolves, even if their record perhaps wasn't what it should have been. But there's various reasons for that, and yeah, there's some who are probably rejoicing the fact that the competition got a bit smaller because it was too inflated the way it was. Now, Tony Brown in the media has been reported to be saying things like that he essentially thinks that South Africa were hell-bent on getting rid of the Sunwolves ever since Japan's vote for the 2023 Rugby World Cup went to France rather than South Africa, so they kind of felt betrayed. I think the quote was, "I feel as though the relationship between South Africa and Japan was pretty nasty there when South Africa were really trying to get the Sunwolves kicked out of the competition." Now, if I put my South African hat on for a second, I would say the South Africans already are pretty sick of the extended travel they get in Super Rugby, so the idea of going to another far-flung destination is perhaps the reason why they weren't all that fond of having the Sunwolves. That's why a lot of South African teams tended to play their games in Singapore rather than in Tokyo. But yeah, Tony Brown obviously with the Sunwolves, with Japan, so he's looking at it from that point of view. I mean, I don't know what the inner workings are. I'm sure there's some politics going on for sure, and maybe the South Africans did feel betrayed, seeing as they were kind of working together. Some part of me kind of wonders whether the JRFU were mostly interested in the Sunwolves to boost rugby in terms of getting them ready and getting public interest up for the Rugby World Cup, because the Sunwolves, since their inception, were a bit disorganised. That first year, they didn't know who was going to be coach. They didn't know who were going to be the players. They kind of scrambled together a team last minute, and as the years went by, they seemed to get more and more organised. And it was that final year that they moved the top league around to kind of accommodate. But then again, they didn't play many of their top Japanese players in that year when they probably would have been at their best, because Jamie Joseph was keeping them in reserve essentially for their Rugby World Cup squad. So, yeah. I mean, Brendan Nell, who's a South African journalist, I follow him on Twitter, and he put the question to South African Rugby CEO Yuri Roo, and his response that the Sunwolves' demise came from the JRU's refusal to underwrite the Sunwolves like every other union does. Rich Freeman, who I also respect, both of these guys are pretty good journalists, man, and he replied saying that he would be curious to know what the actual kind of terms and conditions are for each of the teams, because as far as he understands, the Sunwolves were being asked for the $5 million participation fee, but they were the only side being asked to pay their own travel and asked to forego any TV rights, which could have brought an additional $2 million. So whether, as a bin goes down my driveway, whether things were stacked up against the Sunwolves in that regard is an interesting one. Again, I don't know the answer. Maybe it was a bit vindictive of South Africa with the target on the Sunwolves. Maybe it was just the JRFU kind of had enough of the experiment. Maybe it's a bit of both. I think at this point, there seems to be a bit of distance from Japan and the Sanzar countries. So what happens with Japan will be an interesting one to watch. It looks like, from all I've read, and again, I'm very much an outsider in this, it looks like they're going to focus on developing the top league and getting the domestic game up and as strong as it can be, which is, again, not a bad thing, because over this whole lockdown period, a lot of what fans have been talking about, as I've discussed Super Rugby in various videos, is that the fact that we would prefer to have a strong domestic competition with maybe some kind of intercontinental stuff as the icing on the cake, rather than the week in, week out stuff. So maybe Japan's kind of got the right idea by keeping things, within their own borders and getting local rivalries up and that kind of stuff, rather than trying to be involved with all and sundry. But anyway, it will be an interesting one to see what direction Japan goes in. I think there's lots of eyes on them both at the international level and at the club level. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be one to watch. You guys let me know what you think about this one. Do you think Tony Brown's just a bit bitter and a bit full of hot air? Or do you think he has a fair point that South Africa probably were gunning for the Sunwolves for quite some time? As always, I would say it's not black and white. I would say it's probably pretty grey, and there's likely a bit of truth in both stories. But anyway, interesting one that it came up on a day that I decided to wear this Sunwolves jersey for the first time. It's a pretty nice jersey. All right, guys, take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.